Hey nerds, we are going to do a review and breakdown of And Just Like That, Season 3, Episode 6, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I am Collins. Apologies for the lateness of this review and breakdown. July 4th weekend was a lot for me and just trying to get back into the mode of recording. So episode 6 was written by Susan Fales-Hill and directed by Julie Rottenberg. Spoiler-free logline of this episode is: as Miranda takes a tentative next step with Joy, Carrie connects with Duncan on their writing projects, and LTW butts heads with Lucille. So my spoiler-free thoughts about this episode is Carrie makes up her mind in a very unexpected way about her relationship with Aiden. There's also a lot of symbolism in this episode with Carrie and Aiden's relationship, which we'll get to. And also with Lisa's father's passing, how classism gets involved. And we'll talk a little bit about that when I get to the breakdown. Miranda's stance of getting a new place makes zero sense to me. She just doesn't know the housing market. But the saving grace of this episode is Charlotte's confession to Carrie near the end. You do feel for Charlotte's vulnerability, and it hits a lot more than what was presented in episode 5. So in terms of rating, I would give this episode a 6 out of 10, which is a date night. I think that the plot hole in this episode was very annoying. My wife actually told me about the plot hole, and I vaguely remembered it because it was a couple of years ago when I watched it. They have to correct that if possible, because it's just a big plot hole that was there. Fortunately, there was some gaining of momentum from episode 5, but the Carrie-Aiden relationship really frustrates me a lot. I think that they need to just pick a lane. But this is typical of Carrie because she just is very flighty. If you watch the old Sex and the City shows, which I have been trying to catch up, it's very interesting to see where she hasn't really changed that much since that time, except for the fact that she's older now. Those are my spoiler-free thoughts. If you like what I have to say about And Just Like That and other content we put out there, please like, share, and subscribe for more. We really appreciate your support, and we are growing very rapidly as a channel. And we also have a website now, thenerdsocial.org, so please check that out. Without further ado, spoilers ahead for And Just Like That, Season 3, Episode 6. Okay. So we start off with the nosy neighbor. And I'm not sure as to whether or not this is going to be a budding relationship, but we'll get to the part with Aiden in a few moments. It seems like there's something going on there, but it might give Carrie some more leeway to pursue something because of what Aiden did. It's interesting that they used dinner to be the conversation piece and how awful the dinner was. So it plays on that stereotype of how English food is not really that good. So Aiden then comes back into Carrie's life and breaks the window. She had this whole saying about how the light reflects back toward the window and that it cannot be replaced, and it looks like a rainbow that goes through it. And Aiden just feels terrible about it because he was just trying to do something very romantic, throw a pebble, and then it broke the window. You saw that clip in the trailer itself, and it just symbolizes that their relationship is just very fragile. It's almost in borrowed time, and maybe that they're trying to rekindle something that they had in the past, but they can't have it anymore. Aiden is desperately trying to find a replacement piece. So he said that he was going to Scranton. Carrie tried to talk him out of it. He did comply, but then he just took it upon himself the next day to go to Scranton and try to find a piece of window. So he's desperately trying to maintain the relationship while Carrie is remiss at the fact that, oh, it just happens and it's not a big deal, even though it's broken. That's where the symbolism of the relationship comes in, that they're just at this awkward phase and they still haven't really figured that piece out. This is where I was talking about in the spoiler-free part where the frustration comes in. Pick a lane. What's going on here? And later on, you'll find out what Aiden says that's going to really throw her into a loop. As for Miranda, she is homeless because in the last episode, she was in Carrie's apartment and it didn't really work out. So she moved in temporarily with Joy. It's more like you're bunking with a friend for the last 3 days. She asked Seema for help to find an apartment. And so Seema's able to find one for her. Of course, Joy is overjoyed. That is the case. Miranda's asked whether or not Joy want to meet her son Brady, and so they actually met at a restaurant and they ended up doing really well together. So hopefully things are looking up for Miranda after some fits and starts in her lesbian relationship. She's able to hopefully find something with Joy, but I think it's still tenuous at best because there are some things that may be underlying that they're trying to stir up later on. As for Lisa, who I think that she is still a very fascinating character because she's still trying to balance all these things. And then finally, I think there was some resolution with Marion because you thought that there would have been some things going on, but Marion is married. She was going through a very tough editing process with her documentary. Her son actually was trying to bother her about something and she puts her phone on silent. And it end up that her husband, Herbert, comes in and informs her of some very terrible news that her father had passed away. Now, this is where the plot hole comes because back in the previous season, we already thought that Lisa's father had already passed. And so this is a new revelation that you make it such a big part of this episode, but then there's a contradiction. So hopefully they'll be able to correct that. Lisa feels very guilty because the phone was on silent and her father passed without her knowing and without her being at his side. And so it brings up this question for working professionals that your career is so consumed at all times. So you neglect what's happening in your family because you're trying to be a social status climber or a career climber. And having this meeting with Lucille Highwater, who's played by Jennifer Lewis, some people may remember her as being one of the aunts from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She's this flamboyant theater person who wants to have a really theatrical funeral, while Lisa's want this to be quiet and more inward looking. So there's a conflict between the two because they both love the man that was very significant to both of them in their lives, but they're going about it very differently. I think the classism also appears because you see those two bags there. She's trying to measure up to Lisa's Manhattan life while they're in a chicken and waffles diner and she had the hot sauce out. How Lisa's able to navigate through that, also through grief, was a very interesting storyline in my opinion. As for Aiden, he then confesses to Carrie that he had slept with his ex-wife. Typically, you would think that she would be very taken aback by the fact that he cheated on her. But it was a very unexpected reaction where she was okay with it because I think in her deep mind, she thought maybe I could do the same thing because I think that we could be in an open relationship and I could be with Duncan. So maybe that's what she's thinking. And of course, Aiden feels terrible about the fact that happened, but it did happen. And how does it move forward with all these type of things that keep popping up? This is almost like a second strike against Aiden right here. Because first of all, it was, yes, he had to spend time with his son because his son had a terrible accident. And now, you have this cheating incident with his ex-wife. And so how much is Carrie going to be waiting, even though they agreed to wait for 5 years? How long is she going to put up with this? I am not sure. Is she making the same mistakes that she made with Mr. Big? I am not sure either. Her choices don't make any sense and not very logical. But sometimes people are like that. People are complicated and they don't always make the right logical decisions. And they make very irrational decisions at times. And so during the funeral, Lucille wanted a bigger theatrical type of funeral, and that's actually what ended up happening, to the point where Anthony was saying that it looked like a Pippin funeral. And Lisa really didn't like the fact that was the case. And so she was able to bring Herbert on. And also Herbert's mother was there, and that led to some conflict between Herbert's mother and Lucille. The Coretta Scott King comment was really interesting. So I had a little laugh about that. And then finally, toward the end of this episode, Carrie finds Charlotte shopping for adult diapers. And Charlotte, all this time throughout episode 5 and 6, was really trying to hold it all in. And she finally broke down to Carrie to tell her that Harry has prostate cancer. And so she doesn't know what to do. She has been holding it on for so long. And it just really breaks your heart, because it really was a very pivotal moment that she realizes he might die, even though Harry's trying to reassure Charlotte that it's all going to be okay. And dealing with a person that has cancer, it brings it home. And Kristen Davis did a very good job of acting, where showed that grief and vulnerability. So that's how the episode ended. And it was a sad ending, but it was also a very good ending. For anyone that's dealing with that type of grief, it's very important to see the human side of people. So that is what I think of in Just Like That, season 3, episode 6. Tell us what you think about this episode by commenting down below. Like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you next video. All right. Take care, everybody.